Pacifica radio.
Oh, yeah.
Where they play his tapes even today.
Oh, yeah.
And he had such a great voice and such a great speaker, and he's such a wonderful way of making the most abstruse or abstract or profound ideas very real and accessible and down to earth and easy to understand.
Yes, absolutely. Was he a pretty interesting person to get to know?
Listen, he smoked like a chimney, he drank like a fish, and he could make love like a paratrooper. A friend of mine was once hiking and came across two people fornicating on the road, and one of them was Alan Watts, who said, "Oh, excuse me," and sort of, moved off to one side. And I think that takes a tremendous something to be able to do, if you're in the middle of the act of love and somebody comes upon you, to realize that you might be in their way.
Yes. Well, I agree with you there. Yeah.
Alan was great. He had a marvelous wit. He was quick. By the way, he brought me to his house once, and he lived in this house that looked like something that Frank Lloyd Wright had designed.
Huh.
And he had just the most incredible kind of way with having the books be part of the room without being in their way. They were just sort of like objects that were up on the top of near the ceiling, and there was this little alcove where you could meditate. And it was up on a hill where the house was part of a bunch of other nearby cottages. It was great. He had a great life out here.
Yeah.
It's sort of like overlooking. It was on Mount Tamalpais, overlooking the Pacific Ocean in a way that is kind of like, this is the beginning of the Pacific Rim. This is like living in Asia.
Yeah.
This is a guy who had been ordained in the Christian tradition, and then one day said, "Wait a minute, what am I doing being devoted to anything external to my own mind?" Mm-hmm. Alan Watts is not widely read today, but I think he is a wonderful source.
Well, I still have some of his books, and I do refer to them on occasion because he's
great. I like The Way of Zen.
Yes, that's a great one.
It's a wonderful book.
And I also remember going to a gathering in San Francisco when I lived there to see Krishnamurti.
Oh, wow.
And that was kind of interesting.
What was it like?
Well...
a lot of people were there?
Oh, yes, a lot of people. And he was very slow and studied in his movement. He was quite old at the time, and all he did was walk in and sit in a chair. But I'm telling you, the audience was absolutely silent.
I got the impression when I saw him that he almost sat on his hands because he didn't want to distract you with anything visual.
Yeah.
But that at some point he would manage to get onto your shoulder and whisper right into your ear something that you really needed to hear deeply.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it.
Yeah,
that's a human being.
I don't know either, but I had a similar experience with him as well.
And no bullshit.
No, not any.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very lucky to do that.
Well, your experiences in San Francisco in your book are, I don't want to, I don't know how much you tout your own horn, but it's a you record a lot of the great coming together of so much energy that was, San Francisco in that period.
Oh, have you read my book?
It's not unknown to my bookshelf. No, yeah.
Yes, well, I had a very interesting experience with San Francisco. It was good to me at the time. An intense place to live, to say the least. But you know, I missed the really exciting part when in the hippie days when Haight-Ashbury was in its heyday, and all the beat poets were going to the, Little Italy and sitting around in the bookstores and just rattling off poetry just out the blue. I mean, that was a jam that I missed, and I wish I could have caught a little bit more of that part.
Well, it certainly captured the consciousness of the country.
Yeah, no kidding. Absolutely.
The first beat poetry reading at the Sixth Gallery was pretty much the first poetry reading as we know it in America.
Yeah.
And now everyone has a poetry reading. You can find one in a church basement.
Yes.
It's not something that you would be liable to be run out of town, tarred and feathered for doing.
Right.
Whereas they kind of created it.
Do you think that as a whole we've made some kind of progress spiritually, or are we kind of reaching some kind of divide? Because it seems that there's a lot of dualistic thinking and a lot of judgmental religion that's calling a lot of attention to itself.
You mean like fundamentalism?
Yes. How do you see all that? Is that just part of the process of sorting things out?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. Because, see, the way I see it is that the only solutions to the human condition at this point are really, not the only, but that spirituality is very much what our solutions are going to be about. Mm-hmm. That they're not necessarily going to come from politics.
Yeah, right.
That a political solution that doesn't include the spiritual isn't really going to, Marx tried materialism without spirituality. Mao tried, revolution without the bodhisattva of China, of Buddhism, of Chinese Buddhism. And I think that those were failures of those attempts, and that it's becoming clear to, the thinkers that I read, even the intellectual philosopher types, that something called spirituality is real and is part of the future, if we have one, of humanity.
Right.
And that because this is pretty much what where they tried to deny it, and now we say, well, no, this is true. We don't necessarily know what it is, and so you're going to have some people coming to the table who are fundamentalists, who are manifesting that there is a spirituality, and that spirituality is part of life, and they have either they have their own interpretation of it, or they're still caught in a way of evolving spirituality that we have to learn from, or we have to have dialogue with. I certainly think we do have dialogue with the fundamentalists. To that is overdue. And I think that a lot of the problems of this point in evolution are that the fundamentalists are isolated, and in their isolation are problematic.
Yeah.
Because then you get into this us and them kind of situation.
Right.
You had that in the Crusades, where we have the answer, and you're going to try it, or we'll kill you.
Yeah, or put you on the back.
But so, I can't speak for all of humanity and whether we're going to make it, but if we don't, it's sort of like evolve or die at this point. Have you noticed that, ecology and economics both begin with eek?
I do now.
Yeah, and I think that they both have they include a spiritual component, because they both come from ecology. Economics, they have to do with ecos, our home, our dwelling, and we live in a sacred space. Every step is sacred ground. So if we don't recognize that, I think we're going to eventually run out of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to happen pretty soon too, doesn't it?
It looks like we've had a lot of slack.
Yeah.
And that now there's just that much left that's so little that that nature can't cut us very much more.
Right. Well, there could be a good thing to implement the changes that might need to occur to shift us away from the blatant materialism that we're immersed in and the shallow society that is being shoved down our throats.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about 2012? Are we already there?
I was just going to ask you that. Well, I think it's a pivotal moment, or window.
Yeah.
Not necessarily December 21st, 2012, that particular moment, because I don't think anybody knows when the timing is, but I do think that we're in that window right now, and I think that it's going to be full of interesting surprises. And the main one being a change or shift in consciousness.
And for those who are already paradigm shifting,
right?
What about those that aren't? How will they? What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to those who are going to suddenly wake up and go, "What happened?" What about them?
Well, there's some theories that go that some souls have decided that they want to continue an experience with a third density environment, and that they will be continuing along some kind of third density game. In other words,
like heavy matter.
Yeah, because they're not ready to move up into a fourth or fifth or whatever the higher density is that the planet is moving into.
Right.
And it's possible also that they'll end up having the choice to go to make that shift.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we're all actors wearing masks, and it may be that the beer guzzler on the couch is really an awakened being who's just waiting for the right moment to pull the mask off and say, "Okay, I'm ready."
I love it.
So we don't really know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What zany mystic said. I don't know. I think you're right. I think surprise is certainly going to be the order of the day. It already is in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think we are living in it because, things don't begin with as you say, on a certain clock stroke. They don't necessarily begin with a declaration or end with a treaty.
Right.
And I think we're in this it's interesting that we're in this phase of within, you can't see change if you're in it. It's like fish can't see water.
Exactly.
And yet we're not all in the same school, but we're all some are, and some schools intersect and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a strange time, and I think it's going to get stranger. One of my favorite theoreticians is Terence McKenna. He brought up the theory of time wave zero, that as we approach 2012, there will be a dramatic increase in novelty. And novelty meaning it could be good novelty, it could be bad novelty. Novelty is just novelty. And that time speeds up in a sense. It's not really speeding up, but it will feel as if the merry-go-round is going faster and faster.
The singularity.
Yeah, exactly.
The event horizon.
That's exactly it. You've got it. I see you've done your homework.
Well, it's present in so many different traditions in Pacifica Radio.
Oh, yeah.
Where they play his tapes even today.
Oh, yeah.
He had such a great voice and such a great speaker, and he's such a wonderful way of making the most abstruse or abstract or profound ideas very real and accessible and down to earth and easy to understand.
Yes, absolutely. Was he a pretty interesting person?
It was great. You know, he had a great life out here.
Yeah.
It's sort of like overlooking. He was on Mount Tamalpais, overlooking the Pacific Ocean in a way that is kind of like, this is the beginning of the Pacific Rim. This is like living in Asia.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, this is a guy who had been ordained in the Christian tradition and then one day said, wait a minute, what am I doing being devoted to anything external to my own mind? Often somebody comes upon you to realize that you might be in their way.
Yes. Well, I agree with you there. Yeah.
Alan was great. He had a marvelous wit. He was quick. You know, by the way, he took me to he brought me to his house once, and he lived in this house that looked like something that Frank Lloyd Wright had designed. Listen, he smoked like a chimney, he drank like a fish, and he could make love like a paratrooper. A friend of mine was once hiking and came across two people fornicating on the road, and one of them was Alan Watts, who said, "Oh, excuse me," and sort of, you know, moved off to one side. And I think that takes a tremendous something to be able to do, you know, if you're in the middle of the act of life. And he had just the most incredible kind of way with having the books be part of the room without being in their way. They were just sort of like objects that were up on the top of near the ceiling, and there was this little alcove where you could meditate. And it was up on a hill where the house was part of a bunch of other nearby cottages.